There is a moment that has happened at least once to every man who has ever tried to build something real. The attack comes in public. You are at a gathering, or in a meeting, or online, or at a family dinner, and someone, without warning, opens fire. They make the accusation. They deliver the insult. They tell the room something about you that is designed to lower your standing in the eyes of everyone present, and the room goes still. Faces turn toward you. The air thickens with anticipation. Everyone is waiting to see what you will do. In that stillness, you have approximately 3 seconds to make the decision that will shape how every person in the room and everyone they ever talk to about this moment understands you for the rest of your life. The decision you make in those 3 seconds is almost always wrong. Not because you are a weak man, because the instinct that rises in those 3 seconds is an ancient instinct encoded into your body before you were civilized, and the ancient instinct is wrong for the modern arena. The ancient instinct tells you to defend, to counter, to correct the record, to make sure everyone in the room understands that the attack was unfair, inaccurate, or malicious, and you obey the instinct because it feels like the only available option, and you deliver your defense, and the room processes your defense, and the processing goes against you in ways you do not understand until much later when the damage is already done. The attack was a trap. The defense you offered was the door closing behind you once you walked into it. Niccolo Machiavelli watched this happen in the Florentine courts more times than he could count. He saw brilliant men attacked by inferior men, and he saw the brilliant men destroy themselves, not by losing the arguments that followed, but by agreeing to have the arguments at all. He observed that the public attack is almost never genuinely about the content of the accusation. It is a test of status. It is a probe designed to discover whether the attacked party can be made to explain himself, and the explaining itself is the punishment. The accuser does not need you to be wrong. The accuser only needs you to defend. Because the one who defends has accepted the authority of the one who accused, and the acceptance of that authority is the actual victory being sought. You have never quite understood this, though you have suspected it. You have walked away from public attacks, even ones you felt you had handled well, with a residue of something that did not match the verbal outcome. You thought you had defended yourself successfully. You thought you had made the truth clear. And yet, in the days that followed, you felt somehow diminished. You felt that the attack had landed even though your response had been superior. You felt that the room had shifted in a direction that your words could not seem to undo. This feeling was accurate. The shift occurred not because you lost the argument, but because you participated in it. The attack, successfully delivered, put you in the position of defendant. And once you were the defendant, no amount of skilled defense could undo the positional loss. This is the fundamental error in how modern men respond to public attacks. They focus on the content and ignore the structure. They fight to win the argument and lose the room. They craft the perfect rejoinder and fail to notice that the perfect rejoinder is still a rejoinder, which is still a defense, which still cedes the frame to the attacker. The attacker wanted a fight, and you gave them a fight, and now everyone watching has filed you as the kind of man who can be drawn into fights by people who wish him ill. That filing is the actual damage. The content of what you said is almost irrelevant. Machiavelli understood, better than almost any political theorist before or since, that power operates through impression rather than through content. The prince who appeared strong was strong, regardless of what his armies looked like. The prince who appeared weak was weak, regardless of what his armies could actually do. And the impressions were shaped by the specific, observable ways the prince behaved in moments of public challenge. How he held his face when insulted. How quickly he responded to provocation. Whether his response escalated the confrontation or dissolved it. These micro-behaviors were the raw material of his reputation. And his reputation was the currency that purchased his continued rule. A single poorly managed public attack could cost him years of accumulated authority. A single well-managed public attack could build authority faster than a decade of ordinary governance. You have never been trained in this. Nobody has. The training is not offered in schools because schools are optimized for producing students who defend their work against critique, which is the opposite of what serves you in the political arenas of adult life. You learned in school to justify. You learned to cite sources. You learned to build the case for your position. And these skills served you when the authority evaluating you was a teacher bound by the rules of fair assessment. In the actual world, the authority evaluating you is the room, and the room does not play by the rules of fair assessment. The room plays by the rules of social dominance, and the rules of social dominance penalize justification. The man who justifies his existence in a social setting is signaling that his existence requires justification, and the signal alone is enough to reduce his standing regardless of how compelling the justification is. So what do powerful men do instead? Let us examine them carefully, because their behavior in these moments is consistent across centuries and across cultures, and the consistency points to something structural rather than stylistic. First, the powerful man does not respond immediately. He pauses. But the pause is not the anxious pause of someone searching for a defense. It is the long, unhurried pause of someone who has heard the attack and is deciding whether it warrants his attention. The pause itself communicates a great deal. It communicates that the attack has not destabilized him. It communicates that his response, when it arrives, will be considered rather than reflexive. And it communicates that he is not on the timetable the attacker has attempted to impose. The attacker wanted a quick exchange, a volley that would keep the attacked party on the defensive. The pause refuses that timetable. The pause takes the room back from the attacker and holds it, briefly, in a suspended state in which the powerful man is the one who will determine what happens next. During the pause, his body does not change. His posture holds. His eyes hold on the attacker or on the room, depending on what the situation calls for. But they do not flicker away in a way that would signal evasion. His breathing stays even, his hands remain wherever they were before the attack occurred. This physical constancy is not rehearsed. It emerges from an interior condition of not needing to react. The interior condition, as we have discussed before, is built through long practice. But its external expression is the key to how the public attack is managed. The body that does not change during an attack is a body that communicates to every observer that the attack did not register as a threat. And if the attack did not register as a threat, the attacker has, by the logic of the room's subconscious, been diminished in the attempt. Second, when the powerful man responds, he does not respond to the content of the attack. He responds at a different level of the exchange entirely. He might respond to the fact that the attack was made at all. He might respond to the motivations of the attacker. He might respond with a simple expression of mild amusement, as if the attack were a quaint curiosity rather than a serious challenge. He might respond by redirecting the conversation to a more productive subject without acknowledging the attack at all. In every case, he is refusing to engage the frame the attacker established. The frame was, "Here is an accusation about you. Now defend yourself." He steps outside that frame and occupies a different frame entirely, one of his own choosing. The room, which was braced for a defense, is disoriented by the refusal, and the disorientation almost always works against the attacker, because the attacker's preparation was for a defense, not for a sidestep. Consider a specific example. Someone at a dinner party says, apparently joking but not really joking, that you have always been the cheap one in the family. The amateur response is to defend, to list the generous things you have done, to correct the record, to prove, through evidence, that the accusation is unfair. This response, however accurate, is a disaster. It converts the social setting into a courtroom and casts you as the defendant. The correct response, the powerful response, is to decline the frame entirely. You might look at the attacker for a long moment, not with anger, but with something like patient curiosity, and say, "Is that so?" Then let the pause hang. Do not elaborate. Do not defend. The attacker now has to continue without support from you, and the unsupported continuation is almost always awkward. They might try to escalate, but escalation without cooperation from the target looks increasingly desperate to observers. Or they might retreat, in which case you have won without having argued. Or you might, after the pause, smoothly redirect. You might ask the person next to you about something unrelated. You might offer to the table at large a comment that moves the conversation forward and leaves the attack behind. In each case, you have communicated without language that the attack did not have the power to pull you into the frame the attacker wanted you to occupy, and that communication is worth 1,000 correct defenses. Third, the powerful man is aware, always, of the observers. The public attack is not actually about you and the attacker. It is about you, the attacker, and the witnesses. The witnesses are doing the real work of the interaction. They are forming impressions. They are deciding in real time who comes out of this with status and who loses it. The attacker is playing to the witnesses. The powerful man is also playing to the witnesses, but from a different angle. He is playing to their desire to see composure, to see mastery, to see a man who does not need to prove himself. The witnesses, almost universally, respect composure over correctness. They respect mastery over accuracy. They respect the man who refuses to be provoked over the man who answers every provocation with precision. This is not because witnesses are superficial. It is because witnesses are correctly reading the deeper signal. The deeper signal is character, and character is revealed most clearly in moments of challenge, not through the content of the challenged man's responses, but through the texture of his behavior under pressure. Machiavelli wrote that the prince must be constantly aware that he is being watched, and that his responses to adversity are what his subjects will use to determine whether he is worth following. This awareness is not paranoia. It is strategic clarity. Every public moment is a moment of reputation construction. The prince who forgets this, who responds to adversity as if no one were watching, loses the reputation that his position requires. The prince who remembers it responds to every moment with an eye on the longer reputational game, and the longer game almost always favors composure over combat, stillness over activity, silence over elaborate defense. You can practice this awareness in any setting where you're interacting with others. Periodically ask yourself, what is this moment teaching these people about me? Not about my words, about me. What is my face telling them? What is my body telling them? What is my response to this minor frustration telling them? The answer to these questions over time becomes the substance of your reputation, and your reputation over time becomes the foundation of the opportunities that arrive for you or fail to. The man who has been managing his reputation deliberately across years of small interactions has built something that the man who has been reactive across the same years has not. The deliberately managed reputation is earned. It is durable. It survives challenges that the reactive man's reputation would collapse under. Fourth, when the powerful man does speak, his words are few and his voice is steady. He does not raise his voice to match the attacker's volume. He does not accelerate his speech to match the attacker's pace. He speaks slightly more slowly than normal. His voice sits slightly lower in his chest than usual. These small adjustments signal composure, and composure signals strength. The attacker, by contrast, has often made their attack in a voice slightly elevated, slightly accelerated, slightly sharper than their normal register. The contrast between the two voices becomes, in the minds of the witnesses, a soundtrack of the encounter. The attacker sounds agitated. The attacked party sounds grounded. The witnesses, even without any explicit analysis, assign status accordingly. The content of the few words when they come should almost never attempt to counter the accusation point by point. It should instead reframe the entire encounter. The powerful man might say something like, "That is an interesting thing to bring up here," without any indication of whether he means positive or negative by the comment, and let the ambiguity do the work. He might say, "We can talk about that later," putting the matter on pause in a way that communicates that he will decide when and whether to address it. He might say, "I'm not going to answer that here," with a calmness that communicates choice rather than evasion. He might say nothing at all and simply look at the attacker with an expression of mild interest, as if watching a moderately entertaining performance. All of these options refuse to engage the specific accusation. All of them communicate, at a level below words, that the powerful man has not been pulled into the arena the attacker attempted to construct, and that refusal is almost always the outcome that wins the room. There is a specific response that deserves mention because it is the most advanced technique in the powerful man's repertoire. It is the agreement that is not agreement. The attacker makes the accusation. The powerful man, without missing a beat, agrees with it, but agrees in a way that drains the accusation of its power. Someone says, "You are arrogant," he says, "Probably," and continues with what he was doing. Someone says, "You only care about money," he says, "I do like money." Yes, and lets the conversation move on. This response, called fogging in some psychological traditions, is devastating to the attacker. It robs them of the resistance they were counting on. Their accusation was a missile. They expected it to hit armor and produce the satisfying clang of impact. Instead, it passes through the target as if through mist. There is no resistance. The attacker is left standing with a spent weapon, and the weapon looks to the room more foolish than it did before it was fired. The agreement that is not agreement preserves the powerful man's dignity because it does not admit anything genuinely damaging. Yes, I like money. Yes, I can be arrogant. These are human admissions. They do not diminish a man who is secure enough to make them, but they render further attack impossible. Because the ground the attacker was standing on has been graciously conceded, and the attacker cannot continue attacking a position that has already been relinquished. This technique requires the interior security we have discussed at length. You cannot fog an attack if some part of you is wounded by the attack and needs to defend. The fog works only when it is genuine. The powerful man who uses it is not performing. He is actually in that moment unbothered by the accusation, because his sense of who he is does not depend on the accusation being false. He can agree with the surface of it without feeling that his core has been damaged, because his core is secure enough to admit surface imperfections without being destabilized by them. This is why the technique cannot be faked. The body knows whether the agreement is hollow or real. If it is hollow, the attacker and the witnesses will detect it, and the technique will fail. If it is real, everyone will detect that too, and the technique will work. There is a deeper pattern here worth naming. The powerful man responds to public attacks from a position of internal stability that renders the attacks structurally ineffective. He does not respond with techniques, because he has learned techniques. He responds the way he responds because of who he has become. The techniques are the natural expression of the underlying condition. If you try to deploy the techniques without having built the underlying condition, the techniques will fail, because your body will leak signals of the distress that contradicts the technique's intended message. The witnesses will see the distress beneath the technique, and the technique will register as calculated rather than authentic, and calculated responses to attack are almost always read as weakness dressed up as strength. So the work is not fundamentally to learn what to say when attacked. The work is to become a man who can be attacked without being destabilized. The saying follows from the being, and the being is built, as we have discussed, through long practice of no longer needing external approval, of no longer requiring other people's agreement to feel that your life is valid, of no longer seeking the validation that attacks are designed to withdraw. The man who does not need validation cannot be punished by its withdrawal. The attacker, attempting to withdraw something the target no longer requires, produces no effect. The attack passes through the target without registering, and the target's lack of distress is, itself, the most crushing response available. Because it reveals that the attacker's weapon was operating on a power source that the target has long since unplugged. This is what Machiavelli understood about Lorenzo de' Medici, whom he studied with the careful attention of a man trying to identify the source of Lorenzo's almost supernatural ability to survive political attacks. Lorenzo was not the smartest Medici. He was not the richest in his generation, at least not initially. He was not the most ruthless. What he possessed, and what Machiavelli noted repeatedly, was a specific quality of unshakability in moments of public challenge. When his enemies attacked him publicly, which they did often, he seemed to absorb the attacks without visible effect. He would smile, he would redirect, he would make a small joke that caught the room's attention and moved it elsewhere. And the attacks, delivered with such care and such venom by his opponents, would fall flat in the room. The witnesses, observing this week after week, year after year, began to conclude that Lorenzo was in some way untouchable, and the conclusion became self-reinforcing. The more they perceived him as untouchable, the more each new attack looked foolish for being attempted. The attackers, sensing the room's reaction to their attempts, began to attack less often and with less conviction. Lorenzo's reputation for composure became, in itself, a kind of armor that prevented many attacks from being launched at all. You can build the same armor, not through a single act of composure, but through hundreds of small acts over months and years. Every public challenge, large or small, is an opportunity to add a small increment to your reputation for composure. Every moment in which you decline to be provoked, Every moment in which you refuse the defensive posture, every moment in which you return a mild or graceful response to an attempted insult, is deposited in the bank of reputation. The deposits compound. And after enough time, you become, in the perception of everyone who knows you, a man who does not respond to public attacks in the ways that other men do. You become the man who redirects, the man who pauses, the man who agrees without admitting, the man who cannot, by some mysterious quality, be drawn into the fights that other men are drawn into. And this reputation, once established, begins to protect you from attacks that would otherwise have been attempted, because attackers, sensing that their attacks will not produce the effects they want, stop attempting them. There is also the matter of long-term response to attacks that cannot be dismissed in the moment. Some attacks are genuinely serious, some have material consequences. Some come from enemies who have power and who will not be deterred by composure alone. In these cases, the powerful man's response in the public moment is only the first phase. The real response happens later, privately, in the long game. He absorbs the attack in public without showing damage. Then, in the weeks and months that follow, he takes strategic action that addresses the underlying conflict without ever referencing the public moment. He builds the relationships, gathers the information, secures the position that will ensure the attacker's future attempts are either deterred or answered structurally. The public composure is not weakness. It is the surface of a long game whose depths are not visible to the attacker. The attacker, having launched the public attack and receiving only composure in response, may conclude that the target was unmoved. In fact, the target was deeply moved and has begun, in the private hours after the attack, to construct the response that will, over time, produce consequences the attacker did not anticipate. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should never retaliate immediately to an injury, because immediate retaliation communicates that the injury was felt. The prince should wait. He should appear to have forgotten. He should let months or years pass, and then when the attacker has lowered his guard and moved on to other concerns, the prince should deliver the response he has been carefully constructing all along. The response will land in a context where it cannot be traced directly to the original injury. The attacker will experience the consequences without being able to connect them to the provocation, and the prince will have preserved both his public reputation for composure and his private commitment to the long memory that power actually requires. This is the layered model of response: in public composure, in private patience, and eventually, when the time is right, decisive action that closes the matter entirely without ever having announced itself as connected to the original attack. Most modern men do not have the discipline for this. They collapse the layers. They either respond immediately and publicly, which is what the attacker wanted, or they hold a grudge without ever acting on it, which is what the attacker also wanted, because an unacted grudge corrodes the holder without damaging the attacker. The powerful man holds all three layers. He is composed in public, he is patient in private, and he acts when the moment is right in ways that restore the balance without giving the attacker the satisfaction of knowing they were the cause. Begin the practice tomorrow in whatever public moment next contains a provocation. It will almost certainly be minor. A small jab, a joke at your expense, a pointed question, something. Whatever it is, practice the pause. Let the attack sit for a moment longer than the attacker expects. Keep your body still, keep your eyes level, and then respond with something that refuses the frame. Not a defense, not a justification, a redirection, a mild agreement, a small smile, a change of subject. Watch what happens. Watch the attacker deflate. Watch the room notice subtly that you did not take the bait. Watch the small shift in how everyone treats you for the rest of the evening. It will be subtle at first, but it will be there. You have made the first deposit. Keep making them. Over months, the deposits accumulate into a reputation, and the reputation becomes an armor that protects you from attacks that never get launched, because your composure has become too well known to be worth testing. You are not becoming passive. You are not becoming weak. You are becoming something much more formidable than the man who fights every attack. You are becoming the man whose attacks, when they come, will come at a time and in a form of his choosing, while he appears at every moment of public challenge, to be serenely above the conflict the attacker is trying to create. This is the posture of power, Not the posture of combat. The posture of composure that makes combat, in the cases you actually need to engage in it, something you choose rather than something you're dragged into. And from this posture, the life that becomes possible is a life that the reactive man can never access, because he has spent all his energy on the attacks he was baited into, and has none remaining for the positions he should have been building all along. If this reached the part of you that has been suspecting for a long time that every public defense you have ever mounted has cost you more than it earned, subscribe, not to retaliate, not to prove anything. Subscribe because you have decided tonight that the man who is pulled into fights is a man the world pulls wherever it likes, and you are ready to become a man who moves where he chooses, regardless of the attacks that accumulate behind him as he walks.